Good morning, everybody, and welcome to episode 0000027. This might be one of our coolest episodes yet. We're really excited to have Adam Reed Tucker here, who, if you're from Chicago or build with Legos or any sorts of bricks, you know who this guy is. He's essentially the original creator of the Lego Architecture series. I believe you designed the first 15 sets of the Lego Architecture series. You've had exhibitions all over the world, including at the Museum of Science and Industry, where I got to see some of your incredibly massive skyscraper work live and in person. And I just really love to dig in to your kind of growth from an architect into the world of sculpting and art through bricks. So thank you for being here, Adam.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, we also want to dig into what you're working on now, which is the Atom brick. But first, I want to kind of start with my take in experiencing the sets that you designed. One of my favorite sets ever was the Lego Architecture Falling Water, which, as I was building this thing, it was more than just a sculpture of the house. It was really the essence. There it is. Yep, there's the original Lego Falling Water. I don't have mine here. It's actually at our office. But it's really cool, and what's really special about it, other than just what it looks like, is how you actually designed it with the kind of horizontality and the layers and the terrain.
Yep. Yeah. So with Lego Architecture, this was one of the, at the time, it was going to be the largest set that we had come out with for the Lego Architecture line, and it was going to be the priciest. And I, as a designer, my background is architecture and art with a philosophy of design theory background as well. And so for me, I wanted to capture the essence of the structure, not replicate it 100%, because out of Lego bricks, that's really not going to happen. And you also have to understand too, this was 20 years ago. So the parts and the colors that Lego has now since come out with as of 2026 far exceed the palette that I was able to utilize. So at the time, I took more of a minimalist approach. In the case of this one, only a few different colors, and really trying to focus in on the shapes of what makes Falling Water unique. And one of the things that I wanted to do was make it a little interactive and not have it be a static display piece. And so what I did was I decided to make the levels come apart. So, I know if I do it, it's going to fall apart on live air here. But, things like taking off this roof, and then all these sections you can kind of see here slide out towards the front. Kind of give you an idea.
Yeah.
So it all comes apart and lifts off, so you can see the 4 different levels. However, I brought with me today my original concept for what I really wanted to produce with Lego, and that is more of an artistic approach to the design of Falling Water, which, after it got reviewed internally, because you have to understand too, at the time, Lego was really a child's toy, and now 20 years later, they're starting to really get into these adult markets and adult interests and subject matter. And again, with the parts and the colors, they're able to really make some amazing models and designs. So at the time, I wanted more of an artistic approach, and I believe I pushed the envelope a little bit to where they wanted to rein that in and have it be a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit more condensed and consumer-friendly product. So if you notice here, it's very squared off on the back.
Yeah.
And I will show you the original version, which is completely different, except the house is exactly the same. But the topography and the environment are completely different.
Unbelievable.
So this one never did get produced. This was my original concept for it. And this is the only model that was ever made for my original design. I went through about 18 different versions before I came up with this one. And a lot of people won't know this. That's fine. Maybe a few Lego fans out there will know this. Back in 2008, this piece here, which is a rocket ship antenna, actually never made in tan, at least to my recollection. So they actually sent me out 200 of these custom colored parts that are really just obviously supposed to symbolize trees, but in
Yeah.
an abstract way. At the time here, I wasn't going for realism as much as abstract art, telling the story of architecture through the lens of an artist. So there's that model, which I thought your guests would be interested in seeing how that one turned into this one. So
It's incredible.
Quite a difference. And I'm actually thinking about revisiting that original one I did with my new line, the Atom Brick, because now I can actually produce that, which I hadn't really gave it some thought, but this morning while I was planning for this discussion, I was thinking about that was one of the first models I was really proud of designing. It never got produced. And I thought, now I have the platform and the resources, suppliers, factories, that sort of thing, to maybe actually produce that. So maybe a year from now, you'll have me back on and we'll actually see that artistic version as maybe a very strictly limited run of 1,000 sets or something like that. But anyway.
Well, you said you do have an Atom Brick falling water, right? Is that a different design than that?
Yeah. So I do have one that we did produce 3 years ago for the Frank Lloyd Wright license that we have, focusing in this case with falling water. And so the version that I'm about to show you is over 4,000 pieces. It balances realism with artistic interpretation, and it's quite heavy, so you'll have to bear with me. Let's see if you can.
Holy cow.
So,
Unbelievable.
So obviously the one I showed you that I did, the artistic version I did for Lego back in 2008, you can kind of see the similarities in the artistic approach, right? So like you see the rounded edges on things and how it kind of floats, and then even some of the detail with the support structure underneath, making it look like trees or lily pads being supported. Yeah. But then, of course, making the trees look a little bit more realistic here, and then bringing in some more of the colors into the falling water model itself, the house design. This one does come apart, which I'm going to spare myself the embarrassment of doing that on live camera. But you can always go to the site and purchase a copy of it and take it apart and see how it works.
Yeah, so you can buy that set. Now it's Atom Brick, so it's a 3/4 size of a traditional Lego brick. Right. And as we've kind of talked about, it is not for kids. It is not easy.
Right. Well, it's really meant as a graduation from the Lego brick experience. I'm still a huge advocate of the Lego product. I love the company. I love the designs. I love the people there. It's just one of the missions that I always had when I was with Lego was, how do we expand? How do we move forward? Lego has, a really interesting product line for very young toddlers and infants. Mm-hmm. And actually, way back, they actually had lots of different ones. They had one called Prima. They had one called Scala. And then obviously they have Duplo. And then they have Lego System. And they have Technic now, which when I was younger was called Expert Builder. And so I thought, as an architect, I wasn't a brick. I mean, I always played with Lego, of course. But as an adult, I never really used Lego or played with it, but as an architect, I thought it'd be interesting to explore it as a creative medium to tell a story. And the beauty of the Lego brick, it doesn't require a skill. So even though I may be very skilled at model making, which was one of my fortes in college, and I really enjoyed scratch building with basswood and balsa wood and plastics and that sort of thing, but you do have to be skilled. It's a craftsmanship for sure. But with Lego, the instructions are built into the brick. You don't have to glue it. You don't have to cut it. You don't paint it. The only thing that separates you from me is our creativity or imagination. But, you know, the end result will still be very nice and shiny and perfect because the bricks interlock in certain ways. And so that kind of equals the playing field for someone that may not have the dexterity in their fingers or the craftsmanship or the meticulous nature of, you know, being really a perfectionist with putting things together. So the atom brick was something that I thought would be interesting to continue that journey of storytelling. Excuse me, I had to put that model down so I could share the box. So this is the box, and then in the back, it kind of shows the different layers. And again, I'm trying to tell the story. So for me, the primary focus is always the subject matter. Mm-hmm. And then secondarily, it's made out of bricks. So when you see that falling water model, you know, from a distance, it doesn't look like a brick set. It looks like an architectural scaled model. But the nice thing is you get to put it together. So you get to appreciate some of the aspects that go into being an engineer or an architect or even a construction worker, because you're building up the layers and you're seeing how things, you know, intertwine. And then to give you an idea of the instruction manual. So earlier, Dave, when you had said to me, you know, is this just another child's toy? Is this another brick experience to have fun with in your youth? Well, I'm not going to answer that, but I'll let the book answer that for you. So this is the instruction manual.
Oh my God.
You can see how thick. It's a hardbound book, yes. But you can see that this is, I mean, this probably weighs about 5 or 6 pounds. And of course, like the part of the book does have the history and information about, you know, falling water and Frank Lloyd Wright as a designer, but 90% of that is all the instructions. So the other part of, unfortunately, the society that we live in today is it's all about instant gratification. I know that with my own children. I'm guilty of that myself too. You want it now, plug and play society that we live in. When I was growing up, there was something about, you know, the experience, the journey, not just the end result, not the destination. Not to sound cliche, but, you know, am I selling you a box of bricks to make a display model, or am I actually selling you the experience of putting that model together? So I would argue that the display model is going to always be there for you to enjoy on your desk or bookshelf. But the one thing you'll never get back is that build experience that typically only happens once, unless you want to take the model apart and put it back together, which in the case of a 4,500 piece set, it's not something I would look forward to. So the idea is that you're going to build this not over a few hours or even a weekend. But I remember with my father making paper models that we had to cut and then score and then glue. Mm-hmm. And that had to rest overnight or 2 nights. So it was a process. We made a sawmill, I remember, when I was about 10 years old, and it took us about 2 months to put the whole thing together, because you had to make this part and then you had to let it glue and dry, and then you had to put it with another part, and then you had to. So my point is that, you know, this is something that I want you to enjoy over, you know, several weekends.
Yeah.
You know, so because again, I think you're paying for the experience. Otherwise, we just sell you a finished model. You know, honestly.
Yeah, and I think that's a really. I didn't know where this conversation was going to go, but I brought a couple of my favorite builds out here, and the Lego brick cars, I think speak to a lot of what you're just saying, where you can just buy this car and drive it around. But the build, and when I'm building this and I'm going through the Lego instructions, and you have no idea what component you're actually assembling. It's just and you have like the red pieces that go on and you're not really sure, and then you start to shape this thing and you're like, oh wait, this is the engine, or this is this piece, and then it starts to come together, and it's a really fun experience to try. I try and get into the Lego designers' heads. I know something like this, there's a team behind it, but yours were clearly, it was really fun to kind of, anything that came out of the architecture series that you designed, I'm sure anything from Atom Brick is just really fun to build, because you're getting into your mind process of the creativity of building this thing. And so you're kind of experiencing this with another designer, which I think is really, really powerful. And on that note, like when you design a set, how does that evolve? How many studies? How do you know when to end? Like it seems like the terrain at Falling Water, like how come you don't just keep going a couple more acres?
Yeah. So yeah, you bring up a few good points there. I don't think there's many adults who are going to take that car and play with it, roll it. I mean, it's not
But
something.
I do have to. Sorry to interrupt, but when
Yeah.
I build the car, I do put the wheels on earlier than it tells me to.
Well, I mean,
Right?
that's your prerogative.
I want to put the wheels on it.
But I mean, yeah, playing with it while you're building it and seeing how the doors open and the hoods and
Right.
interact. Of course, you're going to do that. I do that. But that's kind of where it probably stops, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
not, once you put it on the shelf, it's kind of a been there, done that thing, and now it's just some eye candy to look at. It's very much like die cast model cars and scale trains and airplanes and things like that, to where, I wanted to create models that from a relative distance looked like they were die cast scaled architectural models, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yep.
But I didn't want to just, I never really liked the idea of just buying a die cast model. There's no engagement with it. You put down a lot of money, you have an awesome looking model, which, don't get me wrong, die cast models are amazing because the way that they are produced, the decoration, or the decals that we say, the graphics, the attention to detail, all that stuff is very finite. So you can get some amazing detail, but there's no interactive with it. It's a very static and passive experience. So with the Atom Brick line, by making the bricks a little smaller, the smallest that I believe are still usable in your hands, to where the process is enjoyable, but it also differentiates between, and not just Lego, but you're probably well aware that there's like 40 or 50 companies out there now. None is,
Yep.
good as Lego still. I mean, Lego's been at it for 40, 50, 60 years. So they are, the premium brand when it comes to bricks and all the licensing, and they've got minifigures, and they've got a huge team, many design teams, so, so to compete with them would be just delusional. And when I was with Lego for 15 years, and I parted ways in 2019 under very good terms, it was just one of those things. As an artist, I was not being fulfilled any further, and then there were some things happening at Lego too, where they were going through some restructuring. So I was a part of two areas at Lego. One was called LCP, which is Lego Certified Professional Program. And at the time, I was the seventh member. So there were six active that were prior to me coming on. And they actually approached Lego maybe 5 years, like in 2001, I believe. And they actually started the program with Lego as external artists of the Lego group, which was a great program. And I was able to join in 2007. And I think there's probably 20 members now. But I was a part of that program. And then I was also part of a program that was called the New Business Group, which was the department or division at Lego that the Lego architecture line was born under. And then it was eventually pulled out of that program. It's more of an incubation process. And then once the case was proven, then it went into what you would say was, the main Lego umbrella of product lines. And so fast forwarding to 2019, I wanted to explore some other things that may not necessarily have been a popular product or product line for the Lego group to carry or justify carrying, because when they're making a set, they're making tens of thousands of units, and they need to supply, at least here in the United States, a lot of different vendors and outlets and avenues and resellers, not to mention their own online store and their stores. They have several Lego stores, as you may be familiar with. Yep. So, for instance, if you go on our website, I'm not going to put it in front of the camera right now because it's not accessible, but we're doing a line of telling the story of bridges for one of our categories, which is engineering. And then we have another line of historic steam engines, where we have 3 of the world's first steam trains from the 1800s. And so those are very niche subjects. And so I wanted to explore those. And the only way to do that, of course, would be if I went off on my own. And I did that in 2019, while at the same time I had opened up a small little art and creative museum telling the story of construction toys, which is sadly no longer exists, but it was called Blocks to Bricks in Schaumburg, Illinois. And it was quite successful, actually, for the first 2 years. And then COVID came to town in 2020 and January, and we survived for about 6 months. But when 80% of your traffic is field trips and tour groups, the museums took a huge hit because it wasn't, something that was viewed as, necessary. And so we had to shut down. Unfortunately, it's sad, but
what was your favorite build that you had there?
So we had about 9 different rooms that serpentined throughout. I believe the website's still up, believe it or not, because I think we had paid through, I want to say 2030, the hosting. So we've just left it up there. And the map is still on there. I believe you can access the map, and it shows you go through the history of construction and creative, toys and instruments of building. And so we had like an area of stone sets and wood sets, and then it went into paper, then it went to early plastic, and then of course it graduated into like the Lego brick section. And then we had some smaller sections in between. We had an injection molder on site. So once or twice a week I would come there and I would operate this humongous injection molding machine where we actually made little 2x4 colored bricks that we gave away as souvenirs if you were part of a tour group, or you could actually purchase in our gift shop. And we made colors that Lego didn't make, so it didn't look like we were trying to copy what Lego bricks were. We actually had our little logo on the studs to kind of identify our bricks. So it was listen, it was a very expensive experiment, still paying off some of the loans, believe it or not. But I'm an entrepreneur, so you got to put yourself out there. And the other thing that I was neglected to tell your audience is that I was also a part of the largest Lego expo in the United States. It's now a family of brick cons called Brick World. And we started that in 2007. Started it with a good friend of mine, Brian Bonahum. And I was involved in that for about the first 7 years. And as you probably know, a lot of entrepreneurs are good at starting things and implementing things, and then we get bored very, very quickly. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
Brian was exceptional at all the things that I was not very good at or didn't have an interest in. And so my part was really, since it was started locally in Chicago, he actually resided in Indiana. So just geographically, it was easier for me to do a lot of the on-site building of the expo. He did a lot of behind the scenes with the infrastructure, with, you know, being online, social media, things like that. But so yeah, so Brick World is still going on to today. Thousands of brick artists. I strongly encourage anyone to visit it. It's run by an amazing group of people. Mark Larson is now the new owner of it. He's a dear friend of mine as well. And so yeah, so I was involved in that. And again, it's about outreaching. So other creative people have avenues. And so whether it was my time at Lego or the museum or Brick World or now the Atom Brick, it's all about trying to give back in a way where it enables people to have the tools to be creative. And that's really what it's about. For me, the mission with the Atom Brick is telling the stories of our planet Earth. That's really what it's about. So this is not a company that just wants to build with bricks. I could have used popsicle sticks, toothpicks, matchsticks, whatever. There's lots of building systems and things out there, Rector sets and Lincoln logs and all those sorts of things. But for me, the brick was the easiest way to tell that story for, again, a non-skilled person, like I spoke about a little earlier, where you do not have to have a craft or the know-how to put things together. And so for me, it's about storytelling. So all of our subjects, hopefully our consumers of our products find them to be, you know, awe-inspiring in terms of a deep dive into the subject matter, whether it's bridges or trains. We don't have little people. We won't have little people because, again, we wanted to raise the level of sincerity that hopefully our sets come across as being something that's, you know, not something you play with, but something more of an engaging experience of creativity. Yeah.
Well, and I think so your body of brickwork is so unbelievably vast. And so, you know, we start off talking about Lego Falling Water and Lego architecture, but to your point on, you know, the 7 or the 8 categories on telling the story of the world, like your knowledge base is just mind blowing. Everything from pyramids to steam engines to airplanes. Like how do you go from studying obviously all the intricacies and proportions and all this stuff of falling water, and I know you work 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, but like how much research you have to put into really understanding what the subject is that you're sculpting?
Yeah. So when I'm putting in 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, and I'm in my mid 50s, it's really running the business and it's not really being creative, unfortunately.
Okay.
So just to set the record straight, about half of my time is doing the things that I don't enjoy doing, talking to attorneys and accountants, being, you know, fiscally responsible to my investors.
Going on podcasts?
This is enjoyable.
Right?
I enjoy this. I like sharing my inspiration. But getting back to your question, no, of course I don't have knowledge in all of this stuff. Do I have an interest in trains and bridges and architecture? I do. But we have 9 or 10 different categories. I should know that. I think it's 9. Anything from art and design to nature to transportation to sports to entertainment, engineering, architecture, and then we have other for the models. But getting back to your question in a serious way, I bring in experts of those other fields because I want the story that I'm telling to be authentic. So think of me as, and I'm not saying this in a pretentious way because I really, believe it or not, I like to stay under the radar. I'm not really on social media a lot. You know, I like to kind of stay in my workshop and stay alone and kind of do my thing and let other people out there talk and that sort of thing. I'm a very private person. But that being said, I will bring in experts of different fields. So in terms of trains, of course, I have an appreciation for the Industrial Revolution and steam engines and the mechanical engineering behind it. They're amazing machines. Do I know anything about them? Nope. Never went to school, never studied them. So I needed to bring someone in to help me through that design process. Now, things like bridges and architecture, yes, I have a background in that and I have an interest in that. So I will do those designs on my own. If there's other things like Niagara Falls set that we had, where that was nature, we have some other things that we're getting into, like the space shuttle. We just did a project for Blue Origin. You know, we brought in someone that was familiar with the space program. Again, not a rocket scientist we didn't bring in, but someone that has a little bit more expertise than I do about telling that story so it's authentic, and that comes out in our design. So we have a very small team of about 12 employees. I don't think I've ever stated that publicly. So we're not about trying to be the biggest company. We're trying to be the very best that we can be. So I'm not worried about competing with anybody else, any other brands. I think maybe that's more of the artist in me. So it's interesting, like the game of golf, you don't have competitors like you do football, hockey, baseball. You actually compete against yourself. You keep your own scorecard. You're actually competing against yourself. So in that regard, we like to set the bar to where we are striving to achieve that level of excellence. So, you know, I don't know if we'll ever be at mass retailers. Hopefully what I'm trying to do is build up a team of followers and people who appreciate our products line, and we'll just end up being all direct to consumer through word of mouth. But the hard thing about that is when you're a young business, people don't know what they don't know. So you can't go on Amazon and Google something called the atom brick if you've never heard about it. You'll never find it. So we do have, you know, some relationships with some retailers now to get the word out of what we're trying to do. And we're also opening up the doors to invite people in with their ideas or their products, in terms of like if they're a company and they want to do some merchandise for their own brand, they can approach us and we can do a custom build for them. So we're trying to fill the void and fill the gap of what other brick companies are not currently doing. Otherwise, to me, it wouldn't be fun just being opportunistic and doing what others are doing.
Totally. Well, I know, and we talked about it before. I'm like, usually this is a 30-minute show, but there's no way we're going to get all this in 30 minutes. So we might have to do a follow-up one if you're up for it. But we can't end the show without hearing your origin story. And if I can talk through it really quickly as I know it, I'm curious. You tell me where I'm wrong. But this is the vision that I had always heard, or the how it all came to be. But architecture school at KSU, right, at Kansas State
University in Manhattan, Kansas.
And I bet you love that, and the studio.
That was the best 5 years of my life.
Yeah.
Kansas State University. And this is coming from a kid in the North Shore of Chicago. I think I was the only person to attend Kansas State within a 10-year period from my high school. And I graduated with a class of about 465 students. Most of the students ended up going to Kansas University, which is the Kansas Jayhawks. But I went 2 hours south to a little unknown school. And it was that, or the Rhode Island School of Design is the other school I remember applying to. But at the time, Kansas State University was what sold me really quickly. What sold me on their program was the curriculum was based on a very abstract, outside of the box, art-driven architectural education. It was not textbook. It wasn't all based on what an architect actually does, which is funny because you want to go to college to learn how to become an architect. And don't get me wrong, we had things like professional practice, and we had some structures courses and things like that. But the studio, which is a course, which is I believe you're accredited with 5 credit hours a week. This is going back 30 years. Actually, this year is my 30-year anniversary, which is yeah, scary to think about. But at any rate, the idea was they were more interested in developing your style, your vision, your drawing skills, your model skills, so you could be a storyteller in terms of your vision for architecture, as opposed to learning what architects, sadly, unless you're a very well-known architect, 90% of architecture is not as glorified as it comes off to be, as saying you're an architect. You're actually what we call a pencil pusher. Obviously not today with AutoCAD. Now you're a mouse pusher. But the point is that you're doing construction documents. You're in village meetings talking about egress allowances, and the client is dictating based on, the budgets, and you get a lot of this, what I call Walmart architecture, right? Whereas back in my favorite architecture period, by the way, is mid-century modern. And that was a time period where money was not a consideration for functionality. It was more of a consideration where the function actually followed the form, as opposed to the form follows the function. So it was the aesthetics. It was the attention to details that today you don't really see, because they're not an expense that are necessary in putting a roof over your head. So Kansas State taught us how to become design architects, knowing that during our apprenticeships, we'll learn how to create wall sections and detail out, building code, considerations and things like that, because that can always be taught out of a handbook. So yes, so that was a long, I'm sorry for dropping in there, but yeah, I didn't want to understate how important Kansas State University was to me and the impact it had on who I am today. And to date, aside from the birth of my 3 children, Kansas State, top of the top 3. And then obviously working for Lego is also up there. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you kind of digging into that more, because this isn't an intentional recurring theme on this show. I think it just happens, and whatever my network is, or people that I end up, connecting with or are drawn to, a lot of them went to architecture school and didn't necessarily, don't work for an architecture firm anymore. So I had Eric Schlickman, who owns restaurants. He went to Kansas. I had Phil Reed, who's a tech maker in the world there. Aaron Graven, who does technology consulting. Brad Novak, who's an IT director. Like, it just kind of goes on and on. And to your kind of original point, when you're in high school and say, I want to go to architecture school and be an architect, you have this vision of what that is. And like my buddy Dan, who might be listening right now, he showed up with his T-square over his shoulder, and the professor basically threw that in the garbage. And you're either disappointed that it doesn't give you that, architect training that you expected, or it opens up this entire new world for you, which is really, really cool. And I felt the same way in 5 years at Virginia Tech. Like, this is exactly what I would have dreamed that architecture school would have been, but never knew that a world like that actually existed.
Well, for me, the reason why I went into architecture is very simple. Luckily, my high school, I went to Glenbrook North High School in Northbrook, Illinois. They had an amazing arts program, and unfortunately, throughout the years, a lot of high schools have suffered dropping all of their, it's really sad. They drop a lot of cooking classes or auto classes or woods classes, ceramics, a lot of these, what we would call elective courses, or these trades. And I believe it's horrible, because, human beings, not to get philosophical on you and your audience here, but we're losing these skills to become an electrician or a plumber or home ec classes, whatever, all of these disciplines. Now it's all computer, it's all tech, it's all science, and social, disciplines. And so luckily, going back to when I was there, we had 3 different types of architecture courses. We had drafting, we had architecture, And then in art, my gosh, I think there was like, I want to say 6 different art type of courses, and that had nothing to do with ceramics and other types we had sculpture. I remember being in sculpture class. I remember being in advanced art and all these other things. But my point is that when I was in art, I was very frustrated because to me, art was so, I guess, ambiguous. To me, there were no constraints, and I found that my creativity, as an artist, you could be endless, and I didn't like that. I needed some boundaries. And so my father, who actually started in architecture when he was in high school, and then he graduated into art, and I took the opposite approach. I started with art and I went into architecture. But he told me, maybe going into architecture, I was horrible at English classes and history, horrible student, no interest, but I was really good at sciences and mathematics. And so he thought if I went into architecture, there were some constraints within architecture that would help, it would help box in my creativity, because things like there's laws of gravity, laws of physics, there's real things that in the art world, you don't really have to be too concerned with, but in architecture, those things impact your creativity. And so that was the perfect channel for me, because I could balance the unlimitedness of my creativity and imagination, but I had to be pulled back in because of the constraints that architecture and real life, impacts had on that creativity. So for me, it was the perfect avenue. Now, I will say one thing. When I was in college, there was a part of me that was a little nervous, because when you get into your senior years, so it was a 5-year program to get a professional degree of architecture, which meant it was a 5-in-1. You have to go back one more year to get your master's, as opposed to a 4-in-2. So I went for 5 years. And in the 4th and 5th year, that's when they really start to wean you off the creativity and get into, more of the textbook stuff. And there I found that I was not doing well at all because of my interest level again. So that was kind of giving me some hesitation. Do I really want to be an architect? I was not enjoying that part of it. So when I left in 96, I went to 3 or 4 different architecture firms in Chicago and Kansas City, and I was an actual architect, and I actually did love it. Especially I was doing some residential projects, and they were very large, 10,000 square foot homes. I enjoyed doing those construction documents. These were 40-page documents for a house, which is unheard of. Most, and so anyway, not to keep going on with this, but I did enjoy that. And then of course I got bored with that, and I started thinking about using my hands in different ways. And I was asked to make a model of a building, which I did. And I ended up using Lego bricks because I had nothing else to use that I thought would work. And that's how it started. And then
that's so awesome.
Someone posted the model online, and then someone from the Lego group contacted me, and they came out to Chicago. And 2 hours later, it's behind me on the shelf in that picture right there is the original napkin sketch from the Westin Hotel that we literally drew out the terms and conditions of being not an employee at the time.
Is that the one in Lombard?
That was in Wheeling, Illinois.
The Wheeling one.
Yeah.
My kids' hockey team, we stayed there for a hockey tournament.
Across from
they still have the Lego.
Well,
it's
so
still in the lobby.
Yeah, I did a Lego model for them as a thank you for because coincidentally they also hosted for the first 5 years Brick World Expo. So in exchange for that, I gifted them a model, a recreation of their hotel, and yeah, it's neat and it's still there. But my point is that Paul Smith Meyer, the Lego Group, who is at the time the director of the New Business Group, he saw the vision I had for their product, because at the time they didn't do any 18 plus. They did nothing in the area of adult. And so this pilot program, Lego Architecture, is brought in through the New Business Group, and we literally wrote the agreement on a napkin, and that's what's framed behind me. and that started the entire Lego architecture line. So it's interesting how a company that big, and I think other companies can learn this lesson too. You know, in a matter of 2 hours, me and him met and we created this huge juggernaut for the Lego group without the red tape, the bureaucracy, all the formalities. We just made it happen. And that was one of the great things about Paul was he was very much like me, an entrepreneur, where we're not interested in all the talk and the back and forth. Let's just make it happen. And then we'll figure out how to, make it legal and all that,
So the building, so in my head, and again, I'm a creative person, so I create my own stories sometimes, and it may not be. So in my head, you built a massive model of the Sears Tower and gave it to them.
Yeah, no, there's a few. I think I did 4 different versions of it. Yes, I also did one.
But like early, or was that
early on.
okay?
Yep.
And you created your own brick to do that? Was that the Sears Tower?
No,
or you modified a brick?
No, I went to a Toys R Us. For those that are watching this, Toys R Us was one of the coolest places to get toys for your children. But all funniness aside, I went out there because I didn't have Lego bricks, but I went to there was a Toys R Us in Highland Park, Illinois on Route 41. I think actually it's still a Toys R Us, but vacant. I still think the sign is up there, believe it or not. I could be mistaken because it's been a while since I've been in that neck of the woods. But point is I went there, and this is written in some documentary too. You can look it up. I literally filled up 11 shopping carts of Lego sets because I needed to cannibalize enough sets to get enough of the right parts to make the model.
Yeah, you couldn't just buy individual bricks then.
Now you can. Now there's a marketplace like Amazon, and I'll plug it. Lego owns it. It's called Brick Link. And you literally can go to this website and you can buy any part in any color in any quantity. I believe it's run and operated by 20,000 members, and they all have storefronts. It's like an Etsy or an Amazon, but it's just all Lego. And there's, like I said, probably 20,000 different sellers on there. I wish that if I had, and at the time, if I had that, I'd probably be broke because I would have just been buying up a brick.
But instead, you bought 11 shopping carts full of sets.
Because
you make it all sound so simple. You're like, no. First of all, you had to figure out what the repeatable component was, and there wasn't software for that. Maybe you were sketching stuff.
Nope.
And then you had to figure out what the pieces were.
Did it all my head.
And then did you buy 11? You can't buy all of. Dave, there's not enough sets. They had to be different
Dave,
sets.
When I was in college, the last year let me rephrase that. The year that we graduated, the year that my class graduated was the first year that they mandated you had to have AutoCAD on a computer, meaning computer-aided software. So you have to appreciate that my generation and those that preceded me, we didn't have computers as a tool. So the only tool we had with like spatial thinking and logic and this, that, and the other was mind conceptualization, and hand sketching. So I don't know if that's a skill or a talent or out of necessity, but when you're planning to build a balsa wood model of something, you've got to figure out, I need X amount of this, and I'm visualizing this and that and the other.
Mm-hmm.
But you just listen. You just made it happen. You became resourceful. Older generations, that's how they were.
So, how many? I'm getting way too specific with it, but I'm just like the whole story is just awesome. So you go to Toys R Us and you pretty much clean out their entire Lego department. And this was was this for a Sears Tower model?
Well, you got to remember. Well, not you got to remember, but I'll also divulge a fault of mine is that I have a compulsive personality. So I tend to I never crawl into things. When I'm excited about something, I just dive right in.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's an asset, but I don't recommend doing it. Did I really need 11 shopping carts? No. Is that the true story? Yes, it is 100% factual. But that was just me being overly excited and making sure I had everything that I needed or possibly could need, you
Sure.
know. And so yeah, I mean, at those early days, I had to resource my own parts, and then I had no idea where it was going to go. And then somebody posted a picture of it early on social media. I don't even remember the platform, to be honest with you.
Probably MySpace back then.
I
Something like that.
I don't know. Honestly, I think it was on. I was something on Yahoo, maybe. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. But it got it got the attention of Lego, and they came out, and the rest is history, as they say. And yeah, I mean it. When you say it seems so simple and stuff, in hindsight, looking back, I mean it's as simple as you want to make it, or as complicated as you want to make it, right? I mean, as an entrepreneur, you just find a way. That's all. I mean, all you have to do is watch Shark Tank a few times, or one of my new favorite ones to watch is The Fixer. Um, he's a local Chicago guy who's a true entrepreneur, and he goes around and fix businesses. I can't think of his name offhand, and I apologize. Um, but these people are just they just make it happen. And if someone closes the door, that makes me want to open two more doors. you know it's just a balance of figuring out your persistence doesn't become annoying, and knowing that balance of trying to make something happen, but also knowing when to back off or try a different way of going about it. But when you're passionate about something, um you know that's the purpose. What are the purpose, what is our purpose of human beings? you know
Well, then,
you know It's to
yeah.
leave a legacy behind, making a difference, being productive to society, you know, um, contributing to us. Again, not to get philosophical, but the older I get, the more I realize it's less about taking and it's more about giving back. So,
Well, just to pump your tires a little bit more on that. Like, I don't think you really realize how much you have given, because you know the Lego stores, all the displays that you've done, the Museum of Science and Industry in the city of Chicago. How many kids went through that? And none of these are sets that you can buy, but they would just see the whole idea. And my boys are 13, almost 14 years old now, and my one son keeps trying to build his own like perfect airplane wing and is always continuing to shape. It's just an ongoing project. And so instead of just buying a set and building something out of it, all these people, including me, adults too, would go and see these exhibitions and just kind of understand how unlimited the world is of building within that system. And it can be really fun because Lego Masters didn't exist. Obviously, all that stuff has really taken off, hugely in probably the last 5 years, 10 years. But back in those days, like you go to a museum and you'd see these things and you'd be like, what in the, and I just can't overstate enough. And I'll add some links in the show notes. Like the cityscapes that you have built are unbelievable and absolutely enormous. And even that falling water that you had at Museum of Science and Industry was absolutely enormous. Like you've built in so many different crazy scales. And I think did you build all the skyscrapers for the skyscraper exhibit?
oh yeah,
Burst.
sure. Oh my, yeah. I mean, I have there were 3 different exhibits. One of the exhibits, there were some pieces there that were built by some apprentices and some colleagues I had, because the scope of the work was just too much. It would have taken me 2 years to build it. So I had 2 people. Of course I gave some art direction. Of course it had to be in my vision because it was representing my work. But and that's kind of one of the things, actually, not to go off on another tangent here. Like you said, we could do this for another hour. Hopefully we're not putting anyone to sleep with these stories, but I think there is some lessons to be learned here. But as you get bigger, it doesn't matter what discipline, music, art, sports, whatever it is. There's a point where it becomes less about you and more about the scalability of what you've created, and it becomes less of you. So Dale Chihuly is a glass artist on the West Coast, and he is someone that I admired and still do to this day for his discipline in glass. He had an amazing exhibit that I was fortunate enough to view at the Milwaukee Art Museum, which coincidentally, that museum was designed by one of my top 3 favorite architects, Santiago Calatrava. He's a Spaniard. He's more of an engineer than an architect. Anyway, I got to see Dale Chihuly's work inside of Santiago Calatrava's building. So I was like overload for me, right? Talk about inspiration. But what I've learned is that when you get to that big, when you get to that scale, you cannot do everything yourself. And so you have to delegate tasks, responsibilities, and also, unfortunately, some of your craft. So like Dale Chihuly has a team of apprentices of 20, 30 glass blowers because he can't do it all himself. Mm-hmm. So now it comes out of the Dale Chihuly workshop. It's not a Dale Chihuly original, right? And so for me, I still hearken back to wanting to be an artist and love doing one-off pieces. There's a piece back there, and then there's another piece. You can't see it, sorry. But for me, I want to actually, that's the one thing okay. So as an architect, it really, really bothered me that unless you were a Frank Gehry, a Frank Lloyd Wright, unless you had a name, 1% of 1% of the architects have names where people go to them and they create whatever they want. Daniel Libeskind, whatever the case is.
Right.
Most architects will never be like that. It's like a high school athlete that thinks he's going to be, the next Walter Payton. It's not going to happen. It's just a numbers game. It's reality, right? So one of the things that really, really bothered me as an architect was client dictates the design, budgets dictate the design, the zoning ordinances dictate the design, blah, 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 right? I loved, or I should say, I was very envious that an artist, watercolor, sculpture, paint, whatever the medium is in the discipline of being an artist, I was always envious that they could create whatever they wanted, and it was put in an art gallery, and you walked by and you said, I like this artist's work or this artist's work, or I don't like this or I don't like this. But the artist dictated what the art was, and you had to either deal with it or you didn't buy it. And in architecture, right, architects just don't hang up pieces of architecture in an architecture gallery and a client goes through and says, I like this house, I like this house, And so I'm trying to bridge that and through my own journey. And so I think that as I get later on through my life, which I'm actually already at, I want to use my brick company to explore doing things that may not be for mass production, like doing small runs of 100 or 50, because it's not about the money for me. It's about doing something that I'm in control of through my vision and my eyes that somebody on the other end appreciates without them telling me what they want done. And so the art exhibits were very much a collection of my vision of storytelling with minimalism versus reality. And I've always been keen on knowing what that balance is. For instance, you can Google Adam Reed Tucker and, World Trade Center 1, or previously known as Freedom Tower. I'm talking about the trade tower that was built after 9/11. And the model that I did for that one, I didn't put any cars along the bottom, no pedestrians. It's a very clean, what I call clean. But then I illuminated the inside, so it almost became a symbol. So a very quiet way of storytelling and having it be sculptural. So I think a lot of my pieces, Dave, actually, I can't believe it took 2 hours to get to this point, but I view a lot of my pieces more as sculpture, architectural sculpture, telling the essence of what that said subject is in real life. And as an artist, knowing when to pull back or how much to push forward, especially with the brick, because let's face it, it's never going to be super realistic because of the constraints of the building system. Otherwise, it becomes a die cast model that you can't put together, you know? So I think
Man,
that,
that's a,
yeah, I think
yeah.
that's a good, you know, a good little tidbit to leave this on is how things eventually come back full circle. And like you said, I'd love to come back and talk to your guests more and continue this, because I think there's a lot that I haven't shared, and I think there's a lot more to the story that hasn't been told yet. And a lot of people, not to put a question in your mouth that you would ask me, but a lot of people ask me, what are you most proud of? What do you like the most? What's the set you like the most? What's the building you like the most? I'm going to give you a cop out answer to that, but it is actually the truth. Okay. What I am most proud of and what I am most um, prideful is in what I have yet to do. Because as an entrepreneur, that's what keeps you going.
Yep.
So, do I pinch myself? I don't. I really don't. I'm not trying to be humble for the sake of being humble. I remember the first time I saw some of my Lego architecture sets at a Toys R Us, which again, maybe they shouldn't have been there, but they were there at some point. And walking down the aisle and seeing my name on a Lego box, it was it was it was flattering, but it was not like, I didn't view it as an achievement. So I don't get stuck on what I've done. I'm more concerned about what I have not done. And that's what excites me.
Adam, this has been incredible, man, and that just makes us really excited to see what's next. Because it's hard to even imagine. Lego, could you build an actual occupiable treehouse out of Legos? That's going to be my challenge for you. Maybe a lot of Technic, full scale builds. No, but no, this has been really, really special. I appreciate you taking the time, and yeah, we're going to get it on the calendar because we got to keep this conversation going.
And Dave, if I could also say one last thing,
Yep.
if anyone out there listening is interested in talking to me, I get a lot of inquiries. I mean, not a ton, maybe a dozen a week, but I'm a very informal guy. I love talking to people. I love offering advice. I love taking advice. So people are welcome to go through our website, and there's a contact us through the website, and it'll eventually get to me. But yeah, if I can plug the company again, it's The Atom Brick. So it's TheAtom Brick, BRICK.com. And there is a story when that, we'll save that for the next one. Why did I call it the Atom Brick? There is a story behind that, and it's based in a very sensible and practical way. And I'd love to tell that story. We don't have enough time right now. But if any of your viewers would ever like to reach out with suggestions or contributions, I view our company, even though we're very small, I want it to be a very community-based, community-sourced type of business, almost like the feel of what you get with like the Etsy community. So, yeah, again, we'd love to hear from you.
I love it, and I also want to add, because Adam showed some of the actual models that he has when we talked through Falling Water. So if you're watching this on mobile, you probably didn't see them as well. So your best place to really watch the full show live is YouTube, and then you can watch it on your computer in full screen. Obviously, it'll be there after the show. But if you're live on YouTube as well, we can post your comments and questions and things like that. Best way to always watch us on YouTube is just like and subscribe, and I think hit the bell button is what my daughter usually says on her YouTube channel. I don't know. But Adam, unbelievable stuff, man. Look forward to keeping the conversation going. Lastly, it's not lost on me that your initials are Art. Was that intentional from your parents?
I don't know how it possibly could be. I mean, in 1971, to have the clairvoyancy that their son would go into the art discipline. I will tell you that my middle name I'm named after a great great aunt of mine from the 1800s. Her name was Rita. They called me, so they shortened it to Reed. And then Adam, my father is Jewish, and he wanted actually the name Adam in the Jewish culture is man of the earth, and so that's where Adam came from. And because I was his firstborn, so that's why it was man of the earth for my father. And then my last name is just my last name, Tucker. So I think it's just a coincidence. And sometimes that's the reason why we have the word coincidence. Some things just happen naturally. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Adam, thanks again, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for having
Enjoy
me,
the
Dave. I
day.
appreciate it.
Yep.